Today I'd like to have a discussion with you and answer the question that I think not every betrayed spouse struggles with it, but a lot of them do, especially when you are looking at forgiveness and reconciliation and should you restore the marriage and what does that look like? It's basically the question of, can you forgive your spouse too early? The answer is absolutely. I do believe that you can forgive your spouse too early. Now that might be to the chagrin, if you will, of the unfaithful spouse who may go, oh gosh, Samuel, really? Like, why can't you just applaud the fact that they're forgiving us and move on? Because if I do that, I'm not taking notice of the fact that that could be an incredibly monumental mistake, which actually, unfaithful spouse, will cause more harm and pain and difficulty for you in the future. You see, it is possible to forgive too soon. And when you forgive too soon, there is a series of pitfalls. There's a series of struggles that come your way that we're going to talk about today. A bit of a disclaimer. What I'm not going to be saying is that you should hold forgiveness over your spouse's head to manipulate them or make them do things or make them do A, B, and C. That's not what I'm saying. There has to be a very pure heart that says, when should I forgive? How should I forgive? I'm not going to hold this over their head, but I'm not going to lay out this cheap forgiveness because that will cause more difficulty for you as well. But today, I want to talk to you about what happens when you forgive too soon. I hear it pretty frequently. You know, Samuel, I found out my spouse cheated, and within, a week or so, I just made the commitment I was going to forgive them. And I just forgave them. But now things are so hard. Things are so difficult. And the truth is, when you try and forgive too soon, you put this unreasonable expectation upon yourself as a betrayed spouse because you struggle with, well, look, I forgave him, right? If you come from faith, you prayed a couple prayers. If you don't come from faith, you just made the internal decision to say, yeah, I'm going to forgive you. But then nothing really changed. It's still hard, it's still painful, it's still difficult, and then you're finding out new information. And so then you struggle with, well, do I need to forgive the new information as well? And so there's this overwhelming confusion. You see, when you try and just forgive too soon, it falls under this unreasonable expectation that you should very coherently, like a shopping list, okay, I'm going to simply make the decision, not feel any emotion, and just decide, okay, I'm just going to forgive, and then I'm going to be happy, and everything's going to work out great. It doesn't work that way. You're putting this unreasonable weight upon you, and then you get these other people, right, that will sit with you, whether they're pastors, whether they're from whatever vocation, or friends, or even some therapists that'll say, look, you just need to forgive them, and everything will get better. Or here's another one, look, until you forgive them and get over it, nothing's going to change. Now, I will tell you that forgiveness is a key component to the recovery process, but only when you're ready and only when there's been safety by the unfaithful spouse for a pretty significant period of time should you venture out into the waters of forgiveness. But anybody that rushes you to forgive probably doesn't have your best interest at heart, and they don't understand that forgiving too soon makes you feel like you should just all be better now, and that's just simply not the truth. The next thing we do when we forgive too early is we make it harder on ourselves, and we send confusing messages to both ourselves and the unfaithful because we think, well, I've forgiven them, everything should be easy now. It doesn't work that way. You see, forgiveness is a process, and there are layers to forgiveness. That's why someone may genuinely forgive their unfaithful spouse, and then 2, 3, 4, 6 months later, they start to deal with more anger, and they start to feel this sense of resentment well up inside of them, and they're confused, and it's almost paralyzing where it's like, look, we did this recovery work, and I forgave my spouse, but now it's like I'm reacquainted with anger and rage and resentment, and I don't know why. Well, it's a very common scenario that maybe you're coming up against a new level or a new layer of pain and hurt and trauma that you didn't even know was there. And so now it's about maybe forgiving that layer. Maybe it's forgiving new information. Maybe it's you have processed more about the infidelity and are realizing, man, like I didn't even know about that level of pain or consciousness, if you will. And it's time to forgive that new level. It doesn't mean that you haven't forgiven them, because in many ways you can only forgive what you are aware of. You can only forgive what you know is going on inside of you. So if you don't know that there's another level of trauma or pain or hurt or violation, if you will, that's out there, you don't necessarily know that you need to forgive it. And so some would say, well, look, there should just be a blanket forgiveness. I forgive the unfaithful and I move on down the road. It doesn't work that way, because you're not even necessarily in touch with some of the pain that is going to come 6 months or a year down the road. So does that mean that you shouldn't forgive right now? No. When you feel safe, when there's momentum by the unfaithful, when you feel healthy enough, it's vital that you can say, look, I'm wanting to forgive. And you can extend forgiveness, and you can extend mercy, and you can forgive the unfaithful for what they've done. That doesn't mean that everything's over. You may have to do that again a few more times. It just really depends upon the severity of the situation and if there's new information, or as you progress in your recovery, you might be more acquainted later down the road with some feelings and emotions that you didn't even know were there, and it's going to be essential that you then move through them with forgiveness. Additionally, when you forgive too early, you minimize the pain that you're actually in. You see, so many people want to just forgive early on, not necessarily because they want to forgive, but they want to kind of throw a blanket over the fire and think that, man, if I just forgive, all of this will go away. And I understand that. It doesn't work that way, though, because you are in the middle of trauma and there's no magic wand. And so grief, trauma has to be worked through. You don't necessarily just grieve and feel hurt and go, okay, I'm done now. You carry on with that grief, and it will get better as you do grief work. It doesn't necessarily magically disappear, but you do get stronger and healthier, and you do experience healing in a way that causes you to say, you know what, I'm doing okay. I'm making it. I'm getting stronger. I'm not struggling every single day to just find hope and a reason to live. I'm actually smiling. I'm getting a new life back. There is no magic wand, and forgiveness isn't a magic wand, and forgiveness cannot be used to just go, look, I don't want to process the pain. I don't want to process. I just want to kind of stay in denial of the enormity of what I'm feeling. So I'm just going to forgive them and move on. I'm sorry, that's going to come back to you in probably 6 to 12 months and really traumatize you even more, because you'll be so confused as to, I thought I forgave them. Why is the anger, the emotion, the pain, the hurt so intense? Another reason to be careful about forgiving too early is you could be subjecting yourself to relapse and the unfaithful continuing to act out. Because in their mind, well, you've forgiven them. So the impact wasn't that significant. It really wasn't that bad. Oh, this is all I'm going to suffer. Well, that may minimize the recovery work that they do. That may minimize the intensity of their work ethic and what they're willing to do to get healthy. That may minimize their urgency, their passion, their desire to get healthy, because there wasn't much of an impact. Now, that does not mean that you have to somehow torment them, harass them, shame them for their actions and somehow make them suffer, because that will actually work against you. Finally, I don't know that this is the most important, but I think it's one of the most weighty principles about forgiving too early is you as a betrayed are extending something so private, so precious, so close to your heart. You're extending your forgiveness to the violator, the wounder, the unfaithful spouse. It's the essence of who you are. It's your willingness to give up having a better past. It's your willingness to give up the right to continually use it against them. It's deciding that you're going to choose to live with the consequences of their actions. That's not cheap. That's everything close to your heart. If you just flippantly throw that out, if you just say, yeah, okay, let's just, try and erase it and move on, you are more than that. Your forgiveness is more than that. Your desire, your love, the essence of who you are as a man or a woman is essential. It's vital. It's not something that you want to casually throw out. You want to make sure that you have navigated through those emotions. You've prayed, or you've meditated, or you've consciously processed what you are doing. Forgiveness is wonderful. As someone who's been the recipient of another woman's forgiveness for diabolically shattering our vows, let me tell you that forgiveness is almost just impossible to put into words to describe the incredible, willful decision to extend mercy to another human being when it comes to something as awful as infidelity. You don't want to hand that out cheaply. Unfaithful. You don't want to take something so precious, something so close to your betrayed spouse's heart and step on it, drop it, treat it with this familiarity, treat it with this sense of, and trample on it. I mean, it is something that's so vital to them. It comes from one of the most vulnerable places of their being, and they are extending it to you. If that isn't something to hold precious, I don't know what is.